For many Americans, the tragedy of losing a loved one can be painful, and it can be even more stressful to deal with when you are without a will. Joining me now to explain how to plan for your estate by writing a will is Duncan Adams. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you do several things. You are a tax planner, and you deal with estates and wills and much, much more in the law-related area. But tell us real quickly, is there anything we touched on taxes that you'd like to add to?
Well, I'd like to add that estate planning is not something that's government mandated. It's something that's up to you to do yourself. I mean, you're not going to get in trouble for not doing an estate plan, as you probably would if you didn't file a tax return. But it's something that you really don't need to put off. It's something that you need to think about and go ahead and take the steps to do it, because the sooner you start planning, the more money you'll save, the more comfortable you'll feel, and the less problems you'll solve when eventually you do pass on.
And I think it would be good for you to maybe even sit down with your family and have that conversation so that it's really clear to all the members exactly what your wishes are and what it is that you want done, so that's honored after you're gone.
Right. Exactly.
And I think, talk a little bit then, how important is it to have a will?
Well, it's extremely important because if you die without a will, the government will get more involved in that you have an administrator. It may be a member of your family or someone that has standing, such as a beneficiary under the will, that maybe petition the court to be administrator. And they would dictate how your estate is distributed under the Georgia Code. And that, in fact, may not be the way, and probably is not the way you would want your estate distributed. It's just a step-by-step structure. It's very simple, and if you want to give to charities, those will be left out. If you want to spread things out in a even fashion, that actually will be left out, because as it stands now under the Georgia Code, everything is going to go to your spouse. If your spouse is not alive, then it's going to go to your children. And I think you're losing out on a lot of options if you don't make your will.
So is there a specific format? I mean, when you're thinking in terms of your will, you just described so many things that, you know, people may not think about, if there's that charity or maybe even members outside of your immediate family that you would like to have a portion of your estate. What is there a format that you can use, or how do you formulate this will? Well,
what I would urge people to do is talk to an attorney and not go in and buy these forms and try to do it yourself. It's well worth the money spent. It is cheaper to use the forms, but you don't have someone that's listening to your needs and questioning you about things you might not think about where you would if you were to go see an attorney. And it's really well worth the money spent. You know, and also having a will that's done by an attorney is usually more comprehensive and sound and much more enforceable. Because
what are some of the things people don't think about?
Well, the execution of the will, having your witnesses and a notary present when you sign the will, where to put it, and who to tell where it is. I often suggest that you have 2 witnesses and a notary, and that would be included in the will as a self-proving affidavit. That way, if the probate court admits your will, which they will, and you would not have to have one of the witnesses come back in and testify that that was in fact your will and they did witness you signing it. So
if it's not notarized, then it's not binding?
Well, it is binding, but having a notary there will create a self-proving affidavit, and you won't have to locate the witnesses. In fact, they might predecease the person making the will, which would cause a big problem.
Yes, it would.
Yes. So.
All right. Well, tell me then. So you suggest talking to an attorney for obvious reasons, because there are things we just don't think about. But how can you guarantee that after you're gone, you're not here anymore, to ensure that this is executed the way that you have it delineated in your will? What's to guarantee that it will be executed the way you desired? Because you hear so many stories about families who are fighting over the will and contesting the will. How can you ensure that that's not going to happen?
Well, that's one reason for getting an attorney. They can put provisions in there that make sure and also will help the family members not to, what I call, get involved in family disharmony. So to that effect, it's very necessary to have an attorney. And also having it executed properly. An attorney can help with that, and also a place to put the will. And also you would also want that attorney to probate the will in probate court, and the probate court will enforce the rules. And unlike not having a will, in a will you'll name an executor, and that person has standing under Georgia law to enforce the provisions in your will.
Okay. All right. Now, you've mentioned to probate the will. What exactly does that mean?
Okay. In the probate court, you'll probate the will either in common or solemn form.
Okay.
That means you take the original will and you offer it to the court, and they accept it as your original will, and therefore they'll oversee the executor's duties under the will. So you'll have a government involved, making sure that the executor's doing the correct thing, and making sure that, you know, if anybody contests anything, they'll listen to those arguments and make a decision upon them.
Okay. And at what age, then, do you suggest? Because, you know, dying is something you can't predict. So at what age would you suggest creating your will? I
would suggest 18 or 19. Anytime that you're of age, of majority, and you have some assets, even though they may just be some pieces of furniture or something like that, it's best to go ahead and start doing it. And again, with adding the estate planning act to it, the sooner you start your estate plan, the more money you're going to save, and the more comfortable you're going to feel in the long run.
All right. Well, it's never an easy subject to talk about, but we appreciate you coming on and giving us some advice, because estate planning and planning for after you're gone for your family is really one of the ways you can help to make it a less stressful situation for them. So thank you so much for being here today. And real quick, how can people get in contact with you if they want more information about estate planning? And
well, yes, my website is www.duncanadamsattorney.com, and my work number is 404-841-6561.
Okay, well, Duncan, again, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.